Hi, Achim here from InnerSpace Explorers. So, in my last video, I talked about these dive tanks and how to open them and how to check them, etc. And originally, the plan was to now continue with these valves, but now I got so many comments and messages where people were asking, like, okay, I opened these tanks, but they are not as clean as the ones in your video. So, what do I do now? And so I decided I'll continue with this and explain a little bit the do-it-yourself way of cleaning these tanks and what to look for and what to not do, etc. And before I start with this, if you like my content, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you subscribe, hit the little notification bell so you get information when I upload new content. And as in the last video, remember the diving idiot. Here's the disclaimer. And especially as there were quite a few people commenting on the last video that this law in my country and this law and this and you shouldn't, blah, 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 blah. This is my personal view of things. This is things I'm doing with my personal tanks, private. End of story. So there might be completely different rules, regulations, and laws where you live, and you may have been forced to follow these. So whatever I'm telling here is for entertainment only. Don't try this at home. Don't take this as advice. Just go to your dive center, have your tanks cleaned, serviced, inspected, hydro tested. That's my recommendation. So I'm just showing you what I'm doing. That's it. So you have a dive tank, second-hand one, you opened it, you looked inside, and it's not as perfect as the one in the last video. And I'll put a couple of pictures in here from tanks that I actually have sitting in my basement that I just recently opened because a few popped up when I was moving. I got one from a student of mine, an old student of mine that stopped diving, etc. So there's a couple of tanks around that have been sitting for a couple of years. And I tried to make reasonable pictures from the inside. And that's what you see here. So if that tank is, especially talking about steel tanks, so if that tank is crusty, rusty, yeah, and that, so to a point where the rust needs to be removed, like in this one here, then that exceeds the do-it-yourself thing. So of course you can build a tank tumbler and fill it with certain abrasive materials, etc., etc. The problem is, if it is really rusty, that means that it's the material is affected by oxidation, and part of that steel wall is now rust. And when you tumble it and basically grind it out, the wall is getting thinner. So this needs to be done by a professional that can actually tell you, yeah, that's still within the limit. And then obviously the tank should be tested. So forget about that. If it is in that condition, either throw it away, make something nice out of it, cut it open, whatever. And so good point. You see here and here pictures of what I do with old tanks. I use them as display for my vintage regulators. So that's a great way of using these. So in case you're collecting, or it's a good way to start collecting, that's always a great way of using tanks that beyond service, that are rated beyond service. So if it has just a little bit of surface oxidation, etc., if it's a steel tank, my recommendation, or no, I said I'm not recommending it. So what I then do is, if it is a steel tank and it has a light rusty surface and it's dry, I just blow it out with compressed air. So I turn it upside down, get a hose in there, blow it out with dry air, and make sure there's no dust, particles, or whatever inside there. And if it's just a brown rusty surface, but it's not crusty or flaky, that's fine for me. If it's an aluminium tank, and I mean, depending on where you are, but in certain areas, the majority of recreational dive tanks are aluminum 80s. And speaking from experience, we did an expedition to San Eustatius years back, and the owner of the dive center that we used as a logistical partner, he basically went on vacation for a couple of weeks, gave us the keys and said, do whatever you want. And we wanted to dive Trimix there, so we had everything with us. And from his, I don't know, 40 or so aluminum tanks that he had there, we brought our own valves, manifolds, bands. So we made double tanks out of these and rigged them as stages, etc. So we were able to do our Trimix dives there. And so as we also filled those with nitrox 50 and 100% oxygen, we obviously wanted to know that these tanks are okay. So we had 40 tanks that we needed to open, inspect, and unfortunately, quite a few of these we needed to clean. So you're sitting on a kind of remote island, there's no fancy technology, and now you need to clean these tanks. So oxidization in these aluminum tanks, if there's a lot of aluminum oxide in them, then it's the same with the steel tanks, especially you really do not want to breathe in aluminum oxide. Yeah, there's a filter on the valve, etc. So you're not really breathing it in. But anyway, that's something you don't really want in a tank. Again, if they need to be tumbled, so this needs to be grinded out, so to speak, take it to professional or get rid of the tank. What you should not do, and that's actually something that I was asked by a viewer, was, can I sandblast these tanks? Nope, don't do that. So don't even think about putting a sandblasting gun, nozzle, whatever, in that tank and try to blast it out yourself. First of all, and I'm doing this in my workshop, so I have a sandblasting unit. It's always punctual, so it's not that you go in there and evenly reach the surface of this tank. So it's always like spots. And depending on the pressure and the kind of material you use, that can actually take off quite a bit of material. So you can significantly weaken the tank on a certain part. So don't do this. I'm also not doing this. It's complete nonsense. So back to the aluminum tanks. What we found in a lot of these tanks was dirt, grease, oily substances, etc. It was a small compressor in this dive dive center, probably not super maintained. And so most of these tanks were in a state where we were like, we don't want to fill pure oxygen in these. So how do you clean these tanks? Of course, now the book says, if you look in the US Navy diving manual, it says acetone, which I remember we tried like 30 years ago or so, because we read that. I was like, okay, that's what we need to do. Nobody ever dove this tank again, because you never get that smell out there. And what I recommend in these scenarios is always common sense, right? I mean, you want to degrease the tank. There's an oily, greasy substance in it, and you want to take it out, but you want to still breathe from that tank. So dishwasher, for example, is a great thing to use, because what does it do? You take the plate that you had with the steak on in the dishwasher, and it comes out, it's degreased, yeah? So if it's good for the dishwasher, again, I told you this with the regulators. So you see, I'm a big fan of the dishwasher. That works perfectly. These tablets that you can buy to clean artificial teeth. I actually don't know really what the English term for that is, but you probably know what I mean. It's these tablets that you put in a glass of water, and they really sparkle and are foamy, and you put your teeth in there, and then they are perfectly clean. They are actually an awesome multi-purpose, all-purpose cleaner. I use them for a lot of things. Perfect for that. Means you need to have water in the tank. If everything is not available and you're in the end of the world, and for some reason you need to get this tank oxygen clean, and a lot of you will be like, this is bullshit, and no, but I guarantee you it works. It's Coca-Cola. Pour in a can of Coca-Cola. This stuff degreases extremely well, and your decompression gas tastes a lot better. So this is no joke. It actually works. But again, not what I recommend. I just wanted to show you a couple of things that are kind of common sense. So most of you probably heard that if the drainage in your sink is blocked, you can also use Coca-Cola. It actually frees it quite well. So think a little bit outside of the box, use common sense, and there's normally a solution around the corner. And it does not always have to be the super duper special chemical tank cleaner or whatever people try to sell you. So if you have to, or if you're more of a do-it-yourself person, there are solutions out there that you can use at home, so to speak. And on the last video this already started, there were a lot of people complaining that you cannot make this public and this is dangerous and people will harm themselves, etc., etc., etc. So I find that pretty funny. I mean, from my personal experience in the US, there's a way more do-it-yourself than it is in Europe, especially when it comes to cars. You probably know that on my other profession is restoration of boats and cars. So I'm familiar with that as well. And nobody's complaining when somebody fixes the brakes on his car himself. No problem. You can buy the parts, you can buy the tools. People are fixing stuff on their car. Brakes are a significant part of the car, and so safety relevant. So nobody is like, you can't do the brakes on your car yourself because you may harm yourself and others. But on the other hand, you cannot take the valve out of your tank and check if the tank's okay, and that doesn't make sense to me. So it's either or. So either you're a person that has certain mechanical abilities and a certain knowledge and the responsibility to know where your limits are, and then why don't do it yourself? Or you say, okay, this is all forbidden, you can't do this, then you can't touch anything yourself. But saying, because if you touched your dive gear yourself, this is dangerous and this may kill you. You can be killed by crossing the street if you don't look left and right. You can get killed by swimming in front of the beach. Life itself is pretty deadly. So I cannot really follow this argumentation. And if you watch my videos closely, you will realize that I tell you, watch the limits, be careful. Yeah, don't tumble your tank, don't sandblast your tank, don't do anything stupid. If in doubt, go to a professional. But the simple tasks of checking your gear and getting more familiar with it, and I mean, even if you start something like that, and at a certain point you're like, I don't know if this is correct, and then you go and have a professional finish the job, it already gives you a better idea of how your gear looks like, how it works, and it also hones your skills. And maybe next time, then you're able to fix the thing yourself. And I like to encourage people to do that. And that's also the way I educate my kids. And that's why I'm making these videos. All right, I hope you like that. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you have more concerns about safety, or if you say, that's what I'm doing. If you have other cool ideas, or if you use something to clean your tanks that I did not mention or whatever, then put it in the comment section. I'm curious to read about it. And in the next video, we finally have a look at these valves and then the regulator, and then we go in the water. So take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.